Okay, I would like to continue in this video my learning about the English using different sources. There are so many books and stuff that it's impossible. But why to learn the English? Because if we play the Sicilian, we practically already know how to play the English. Why? Because C4, E5 is practically the same of E4, C5. Okay? So once we understand that the pawn structure is what actually govern the game, then we know how to play, right? So after this would be like E4, C5, right? But this time you're white, and so you play this. Why do you play this move? Because you want to control this. The fight is always for D4 in the Sicilian and D5 in the English. Okay? So after this there are some different possibilities. For example, now black can play knight f6, but he could try also to play something like similar to the Dutch. It's not a Dutch, honestly, because the Dutch is a little different. The Dutch wants to still fight for this. Instead here is totally different, but it can look like a Dutch. In this case, the point here is to attack the center. It's when we understand if we need to attack the center or not. And this asks the question immediately. Okay? So let's say that black plays this e4, white continue with knight h3 to stabilize this area, knight f6, and bishop g5. This is practically change the structure. You say, what change the structure? You spoke of Sicilian, right? Not here. Here it's like a French advance, we could say. Because the next move will be something like this. And that's the same structure that we have with this as black in the French advance. So it's possible that this kind of structure is more favorable for white. Possible. I'm not totally sure, okay? But it was just an idea. Now let's return back to our position. C4, E5, okay, knight C3 fighting for this, knight F6 fighting for this, okay? So we are all fighting for that. The next move, again, in the Sicilian would be something like this, but this would be already up, so it's this one. And so for white is this, because he attack the pawn e5, right? And black defends. So we are just playing some simple moves. This is another interesting situation, I think, because when I was thinking about this, it looked to me like a Maroczy bind, but in reality it's not a Maroczy bind, because there should be a pawn here and not the pawn here, I think. I don't know if it's totally transposable. However, maybe this is similar to the Sveshnikov for black. And how does the Sveshnikov, so pay attention to that pawn structure. The Sveshnikov is like this: e4, knight c5, c5, knight f3, knight c6, knight c3, e5. Okay? So eventually, if one wants to know more, because again, it's only about to keep our mind flexible, one should look for games in this move order and then apply it to white, no? Because it will be like white. And that's the point that we needed to understand here, okay? So let's return back. c4, e5, knight c3, fighting for this, knight f6, fighting for this, knight f3, attacking this, knight c6, attacking this, cioè protecting this, e4, okay? So e4 is clearly to control this square at all cost. How do we continue as black? Obviously here there are many possibilities. I think bishop b4 is maybe the main one, but probably it's possible to play in style of a close Sicilian for white with g6. Okay, let's see what happens. For example, d4, e takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop g7, knight takes c6, d takes c6, queen takes d8, king takes d8, and bishop d2. Here the idea, I think the position is probably nicer for white. Why? Because he was able to keep the enemy king in the center. The plan for white is obviously castle and push to control once more the center, okay? So probably this is how white should continue. Now let's go back again and see what happens in generally the most used line. I use this idea of making a video also to try to memorize for me when maybe I don't have a chessboard, I have some time I want to enjoy to see the thing, okay? So c4, e5, knight c3, fighting for this, knight f6, fighting for it, knight f3, attacking e5, knight c6, protecting e5, e4 to control this, okay? And then we have seen what happens on this. Now we see bishop b4. That probably is the most used move, okay? Okay, so let's go. There is this little mosquitoes. Okay, let's see. Here white needs to protect this, because if he takes this wall, so this is the move to play d3, okay? The next is black that wants to develop this bishop, and so he plays d6. This is the same dark squares bishop in the Sicilian that develops here and is blocked by the pawns that develops here. So we have similarly also in the French the bad light square bishop, okay? Okay, so castle, castle, and here it says now white has some ideas, okay, after this castling. What are the ideas? Well, I think this is a very typical idea of English, is 1, 2, 3, because wants to control this and probably this. But this is really the mass of control. Then white wants to play also f4, okay? So that's the important thing, okay? And so we saw a maneuver that I think we need to memorize. That's a maneuver that we need to memorize and that we can see also in games. Okay, let's continue. h6. So the idea here of h6 is not for the pin, but it's for moving this pawn. How? Knight h7, f5. So h6 is practically to create a square where the knight can retreat in order to push, okay? That's the important idea. Instead, a3, it's really an attack on that bishop that asks black the question, what do you want to do now? Black probably want to take, because obviously there is not much space left. Take, and now this, because that's the goal, but it's also white turn, and white plays bishop e3. Now the development of white is still not totally completed, in the sense that generally we consider the development over when the queen is moved and the rooks are connected. That should be the definition, okay? But obviously bishop e3 is made to change the structure of white. White has a little problem here, because this is isolated and these are doubled, and that's a fact, that one likes it or not. But black continues and attack the center, okay? Obviously there can be probably other moves, probably at this point white, black could also play probably this, to try to take control of this. And probably if we watch a little, there could be a different plan here. Rook e1, f5, e takes f5, bishop takes f5, d4, e4. At this point, you know, the plan knight e1, c2, e3 is totally out of the window. We need to go for another plan, right? So the plan is knight d2, knight f6, bishop f4, and then we have knight f1, knight e3, okay? So this is really important to remember it, okay? Okay, now after this we need to return back to the position as it was without b6. Let me pause the video, otherwise it makes a little too long probably. Okay, I think I put back the pieces in the correct place. White just played bishop e3, and we saw if black tries to control this, now we see the plan for which this was moved here, f5, okay? So let's see how it continues after this, okay? After 10 f5, let's see. But obviously e takes f5, bishop takes f5, c5. This is a very important move, obviously, because white wants to get rid of the double pawns. That's it. There is also another reason. Every time you move this pawn on f5, you create a lot of weaknesses. But the main weakness, especially in the Dutch, is this check that you can sometimes give on b3, that sometimes when you have a knight on g5 jumps here, or there is an attack here, it's a mess. So c5 is important also for this queen b3, okay? And in this case, in this particular position, because he attacks this pawn. So obviously black prevent that playing king h8, but obviously there could be some other move, like probably d5. Makes sense, d5, right? Let's see what happens. d4, e4, knight e5, and after knight takes, d takes e5. At this point I think both players are fighting in the center, so it's obvious that probably this will be the attack on that, but I don't know if it's the correct one. Why? Because obviously these are all very bad. This is isolated, these are isolated, and this is kind of little too advanced in order to survive. So probably, of course, one should try to play this position as white and as black to understand if it works or not, okay? So let me go back and see the position, to set up the position again. So I want to save the watcher of this video the tediousness of repeating the position, but honestly I think it's the only way to memorize this stuff is to actually play the moves over the board, especially if the idea is to play it in a tournament, right? Because that's how you will try to remember it. So attacking, defending, blocking the advance, controlling this, attacking this, which threatens this, so you must play this. At this point there are these two moves that maybe are difficult to remember. One is this and then this, okay? Then I think there is castle and castle, if I remember well, and then it becomes a little difficult to remember. So, as you can see, the memory of a beginner or club player can become a little clouded also at this point, right? So let's see, how do you remember this move that black is going to play? And maybe the point is you don't need to remember it, but you need to remember the plan, that is this and this. So I don't know. This, okay, makes sense because you want to attack that. And this, however, simplify the thing. Let's see. Knight h7 because you want to play this. Bishop e3 because you want to get rid of this. f5, which is coherent with this move. Okay. E takes f5 needed, bishop takes f5, and now there is this c5. c5, we saw the idea of this, but black plays generally this because it takes away from the diagonal. C takes d6, okay, makes sense because he played the c5 because he wants to get rid of the double pawns. C takes d6, and now c4. Once more the fight is for these light squares in the center. Knight f6, h3, and this is really played to control this, to avoid knight g4. Rook c8, rook c1. Let's see. And here the ideas, I mean, we are at move 16, How do you remember up to move 16? I don't know. But the idea for white is that he wants to push d4 and then play knight d2 and d5. Why knight d2? Because he thinks that when you play d4, black will not take but will push. So knight d2, okay. I don't know, d5 maybe. Why not d5? I don't know. But that's the thing. Again, at this point, we are move 16. I think here one needs to play it, okay? Needs to play this kind of position against maybe an engine to see if it's possible or not to play and what is the advantages. Keep in mind, this is unprotected, this is unprotected, this is a backward pawn. White has the bishop pair, which is good. I don't know. I think it's definitely an interesting position. Okay, and so with this I conclude this study of the English for this variation, and then I will continue on other one.